The door to my office shook with every violent blow. From the screen of my cell phone parked 2 blocks away from my own house, I watched everything with a mixture of contained fury and cold satisfaction. Jessica, my daughter-in-law, was pounding on the solid wood with her clenched fists, her face twisted in a grimace of pure rage. "Damn it! Why is this door locked?" she screamed, and her words resonated through the hidden microphones I had installed myself 3 weeks ago. I had spent 6 months preparing for this moment. 6 months saving every piece of evidence, every lie, every attempt to steal everything I had built over 40 years of honest work. From my car, I squeezed the cell phone between my wrinkled but firm hands, these 63-year-old hands that she believed were weak, useless, and senile. How wrong she was. The door gave way with a dry crack that made me smile. Jessica lost her balance and fell face first into my office, her screams drowning in an exclamation of surprise. But when she lifted her head and saw what I had prepared inside, her scream changed. It transformed into something different, something I had waited to hear for so long. It was the scream of someone who just discovered she was defeated by the person she underestimated the most in her life. I took a deep breath, put the cell phone in my worn leather purse, and started the engine. It was time to go home. It was time for Jessica to know who Emily Carter really was. It all started exactly a year and a half ago when Michael called me excited to tell me he had met someone special. My son, my only son, was 42 years old and had never shown serious interest in settling down. I was happy for him, genuinely happy. After my husband died 7 years ago from a sudden heart attack, Michael became my constant company, my support, my reason to keep going. We worked together in the import company his father and I built from scratch, and I had planned to leave him everything when the time came. The first time I saw Jessica was at an elegant restaurant downtown. Michael was practically glowing when he introduced us. She was 36 years old, with straight black hair down to her shoulders, dark eyes that seemed calculating even when they smiled, and a wine-colored dress that must have cost more than $300. She extended her hand with a perfect smile, too perfect, and said in a honeyed voice, "Mrs. Carter, Michael has told me so much about you. It is an honor to meet the woman who raised such a wonderful man." I shook her hand, feeling how her long, red-painted nails pressed slightly into my skin. Something inside me, that voice one develops after decades navigating the business world, whispered a warning. But I ignored that voice. I wanted my son to be happy. I wanted to believe he had found someone genuine. How foolish I was. The first 3 months were a masterful performance on her part. Jessica would come to my house with homemade desserts. She asked about my health. She praised every detail of my decoration. "What beautiful antique vases, Mrs. Carter. It shows you have exquisite taste," she would say, while her eyes roamed every corner of my living room, cataloging, evaluating, calculating. Michael was completely bewitched. He looked at her as if she were the 8th wonder of the world. When they announced their engagement after only 4 months of dating, I smiled and hugged them, although my stomach twisted with a feeling I could not name. The wedding was quick, intimate, in a garden, decorated with white flowers and ivory tablecloths. Jessica looked radiant in a wedding dress that must have cost thousands of dollars, paid for by Michael, of course. I wore a pearl gray suit and held my champagne with trembling fingers, not from emotion, but from an inexplicable anxiety. During the toast, Jessica looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Thank you, Mama Emily, for giving me this wonderful man. I promise to take care of him all my life." The way she pronounced Mama froze my blood. It did not sound like affection. It sounded like possession. The first real sign came 2 weeks after the wedding. Michael and Jessica had rented a small but comfortable apartment in the north side of the city. I visited them to bring a new coffee maker I had bought as a housewarming gift. When I arrived, Jessica opened the door with a tense smile. "Oh, Mrs. Carter, what a surprise. Michael is in the shower." She let me in, but her body language was closed, defensive. While I placed the coffee maker in the kitchen, I heard her talking on the phone in the bedroom. Her voice, which had always been sweet and controlled in front of me, sounded different. "Do not worry, it is just the old lady. Yes, I know. Soon. Give me time. I felt as if ice water had been thrown on me. The old lady. I stood paralyzed in that tiny kitchen, my hands clutching the edge of the cheap granite counter. When Michael came out of the bathroom and found me there, his smile was genuine and warm. "Mom, what a pleasure to see you." Jessica appeared seconds later, her face transformed again into that mask of the perfect daughter-in-law. "Mrs. Carter, you will stay for lunch with us, right?" I did not stay. I invented an excuse about a doctor's appointment and got out of there with my heart beating too fast. In my car sitting in the building's parking lot, I tried to convince myself that I had misunderstood. I tried to believe my imagination was playing tricks on me. But that little inner voice, the one I had ignored before, was now screaming loudly. Something was terribly wrong. Jessica's visits to my house began to become more frequent, but she no longer brought desserts or genuine smiles. She arrived when Michael was at the office, always with some prepared excuse. "Mama Emily, I was passing by and thought I would visit you. You should not be alone so long at your age." That phrase, "at your age," became her favorite tag. She dropped it in every conversation like someone dropping poison into a glass of wine. At first they were subtle comments while she walked through my living room, inspecting every object as if she were a professional appraiser. "Oh, how lovely this Persian rug is, but it must be hard to keep clean at your age, right?" Or, "So many stairs in this house, are you not worried about falling?" I responded with icy politeness, offering her tea. She never finished drinking. But my eyes followed her, watching how her fingers brushed the family photo frames, how she opened drawers stealthily when she thought I was not looking, how her eyes lingered too long on the documents I left on my study desk. One afternoon, I found her inside my office without permission. "Sorry, Mama." "Emily, I was looking for the bathroom," she said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. My office was on the second floor next to my bedroom. The guest bathrooms were downstairs. That was the first time I felt not just distrust, but real fear. Things escalated when Jessica began planting seeds of doubt in Michael's mind. I noticed it in his phone calls. "Mom, are you sure you took your medication today?" He asked me with a worry that sounded rehearsed. "Jessica told me she called you 3 times yesterday, but you say it was only once." I felt the floor moving under my feet. I had never called Jessica 3 times. In fact, I avoided calling her completely. "Michael, your wife is lying," I told him with a firm voice during a dinner at my house. He put the silverware on the plate with a dry noise. "Mom, please. Jessica is just worried about you. We all are. You have been more forgetful lately. My own blood, my own son doubted me." I looked at Jessica across the table. She cut her meat with precise movements, a microscopic smile playing on her lips. In that moment, I understood I was facing a patient, calculating predator who had studied every weakness and was weaving an invisible web around my life. That night after they left, I sat in my dark living room for hours, the city lights flickering through the windows. I did not cry. The fear transformed into something different, something colder and more dangerous. If Jessica wanted to play, I would teach her how women who had survived 4 decades in the business world played. I hired a private investigator named Thomas, a 50-year-old man with experience in family fraud cases. I paid him $5,000 up front and gave him a list of everything he needed to know about Jessica. A week later, Thomas arrived at my house with a manila envelope full of documents that confirmed my worst suspicions. Jessica had been married twice before. Her first husband was an older man, a widower with a prosperous hardware store. They married when she was 25. He died 8 months later in suspicious circumstances, a fall down the stairs of his own house. Jessica inherited everything. The second husband was a divorced accountant with 2 adult children. That marriage lasted a year before he discovered her forging his signature on bank documents. They divorced, but he did not press charges because Jessica returned the money and threatened to accuse him of abuse if he spoke. Mrs. Carter Thomas told me, while I read every page with trembling hands, "This woman is a professional con artist. Her pattern is always the same. She looks for men with widowed mothers or elderly parents who have properties. She marries fast, gains trust, and then begins to isolate the partner from their family while convincing them that their parents are losing their mental faculties." I felt nauseous. Michael was exactly the perfect profile. Only child, widowed mother, heir to a company valued at over $2 million and 3 paid-off properties. I was not an easy victim to manipulate like the previous ones, and that was frustrating her. That is why she had intensified her attacks. I asked Thomas to install hidden security cameras all over my house. Small, imperceptible, placed in clocks and paintings and decorative vases. I also placed audio recorders in the main rooms. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Carter?" Thomas asked me while programming the system so everything would be saved in a private cloud accessible from my cell phone. "Completely sure," I replied. I did not tell Michael about the cameras. I did not tell him about the investigation. My son was so blinded by what he believed was love that any evidence I presented would be dismissed as the paranoia of a jealous mother. I needed irrefutable proof. I needed Jessica to reveal herself in her truest form, without masks, without performances, and I knew exactly how to achieve it. I began acting more forgetful in Jessica's presence. I repeated stories I had just told, asked things I had just asked, left keys in strange places on purpose. I saw how her eyes lit up every time I made one of these mistakes. I saw her whisper to Michael in the kitchen, her voice grave and worried. "Honey, your mother really needs help. She cannot keep living alone in this house so big." Michael nodded, his face marked by genuine concern. Every time I saw him fall deeper into her lies, a part of my heart broke. But I could not stop. This was war, and I needed to win, not just for me, but for my son. The real breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. Jessica appeared at my house without warning, accompanied by her sister Brenda, a woman with a sharp face and a gaze as calculating as Jessica's. "Mama Emily let me introduce you to my sister. She is visiting the city and wanted to meet you." Brenda shook my hand with excessive force, evaluating me from head to toe like someone evaluating cattle at an auction. I invited them in, my act of confused old woman already perfected. I made coffee, spilled a little in the process, apologized awkwardly. I saw them exchange significant looks. After half an hour of superficial conversation, I went to the bathroom. From the hallway with the door ajar, I heard them talking in the living room. My cell phone was in my pocket, the camera app active, recording everything. "She is perfect," Brenda said with a low laugh. "She is more senile than you thought. It will be easy." Jessica's voice sounded triumphant. "I know. Michael is already considering the nursing home. Once she is out, the house and properties will pass to his name, and as his wife, I will have access to everything. We will sell the company in parts." My blood turned to ice. I took a deep breath, counted to 10, and returned to the living room with a trembling and confused smile. "Sorry, what were we talking about?" I saw them smile, believing they had won. That night, I did not sleep. I stayed in my bed, looking at the ceiling, listening to the silence of my empty house. A house that had been my refuge for decades and that now Jessica wanted to snatch from me. I reviewed the recordings on my cell phone again and again, every poisonous word being registered with perfect clarity. "We will sell it in parts," Jessica had said. My company, the legacy I built with my husband, sweat and tears invested in every contract, every negotiation, every early morning working while the world slept. She saw it as simple numbers in a bank account. At 6 in the morning, I made a decision. I was not going to wait for them to lock me in a nursing home while she enjoyed my life. I called Thomas and asked him to come immediately. When he arrived with dark circles that betrayed he had not slept well either, I showed him the recordings. His face hardened with every second that passed. "This is enough for a restraining order, Mrs. Carter. We could even press charges for attempted fraud." I shook my head, my hands steady despite the fury burning in my chest. "I do not want restraining orders. I want my son to see who the woman he married really is. I want her to fall into her own trap." Thomas smiled, a thin and complicit smile. "Then we need a better plan." Over the next few days, I mounted my strategy with the precision of a general preparing for battle. First, I discreetly transferred most of my liquid assets to a new bank account in a different institution, an account Michael had no knowledge of and Jessica could never access. It was $450,000 that I took out of investments and savings, leaving only the minimum in the joint accounts I shared with my son for company expenses. Second, I contacted my trusted lawyer, a man named Jeremy, who had handled my legal affairs for 20 years. I explained the whole situation, showed him the evidence, the recordings the investigators report on Jessica's previous marriages. Jeremy listened to everything with an increasingly serious expression. "Emily, this is delicate. Michael is legally your heir, and as his wife, Jessica has rights to his assets." I nodded. I had already thought about that. That is why I need you to draft a new will. If something happens to me under suspicious circumstances, everything goes to a charity foundation we will establish. Michael will only inherit if he divorces Jessica or if I can legally prove her attempted fraud. Jeremy paused for a long time, then nodded. "Give me a week." Meanwhile, I continued my performance of an older woman losing her mind. Every visit from Jessica was a carefully choreographed show where I forgot names, confused dates, left the stove on deliberately so she would find it and run to tell Michael. Jessica's manipulation became more aggressive. She began taking Michael to dinners with friends where she casually mentioned in front of everyone how worried they were about my mental health. Poor Emily asked 3 times in an hour where her husband was. She does not remember he died 7 years ago. "It is heartbreaking," she would say with a broken voice, her eyes wet with perfectly calculated fake tears. Michael would arrive later at my house with an anguished expression. "Mom, we need to talk about getting you help. Jessica and I have been researching very good assisted living facilities, beautiful places where you would be taken care of 24 hours a day." I looked at him with apparently confused eyes, letting my lower lip tremble slightly. "Residences. But son, I am fine here in my house." He took my hands with genuine concern, and that was what hurt the most. My own son, my Michael, the boy I raised, taught to ride a bike, comforted after every scraped knee, now looked at me as if I were a senile stranger who needed to be institutionalized, and all because of that viper sleeping in his bed every night. But I could not break character yet. I needed Jessica to be completely confident to take the definitive step that would sink her forever. Jessica's masterstroke came disguised as medical concern. One afternoon, she appeared at my house with a doctor, a gray-haired man named Dr. Stevens, who was supposedly a specialist in geriatrics. Mama Emily, Dr. Stevens, is a family friend and agreed to come do a quick evaluation just to make sure everything is okay. I acted surprised, confused, even slightly scared. The doctor asked me basic questions about dates, names, locations. I answered some correctly and others deliberately wrong. "What year are we in, Mrs. Carter?" 1900. "No, wait, 2016. I saw how Jessica wrote down every mistake in a small notebook, her eyes shining with barely contained satisfaction. When the doctor finished, he spoke with Jessica in a low voice in the hallway, but my hidden cameras captured every word. "She shows clear signs of cognitive deterioration. I would recommend a deeper evaluation and seriously consider residential care options." What Jessica did not know was that after they left, I called the medical board and discovered that Dr. Stevens had been suspended 2 years ago for signing fake medical certificates in exchange for money. Thomas got the records. Jessica had paid $5,000 for that fraudulent diagnosis. Every piece of the puzzle fit perfectly into my collection of evidence. The pressure on Michael increased exponentially. Jessica organized a family dinner where she invited Brenda again, this time with her husband, a quiet man with an empty gaze who was clearly used to his wife making all the decisions. During dinner in my own house, a dinner I prepared with hands trembling from contained rage, Jessica directed the conversation like an orchestra conductor. "Michael and I have been thinking a lot about the future. The company needs quick and effective decisions, and with all due respect to Mama Emily, she can no longer handle the administrative load." Michael lowered his gaze to his pasta plate, uncomfortable, but without contradicting her. "We have consulted with lawyers." Jessica continued, her voice soft but lethal, like a knife wrapped in velvet. "And the best thing would be for Michael to assume total control of the company through a broad power of attorney. That way Mama Emily can rest without worries." Brenda nodded with exaggerated enthusiasm. "It is the most sensible thing. My mother went through something similar, and it was the best decision we made." I watched them both, these two sisters, who had clearly perfected this scheme together, probably on multiple occasions with different victims. I dropped my fork with a metallic noise, feigning clumsiness. Power of attorney. I do not understand. Jessica leaned toward me with an expression of false compassion. Do not worry, Mama Emily. They are just papers so Michael can help you better. I nodded slowly, feigning confusion, but inside, I was calculating my next move. They wanted papers. I would give them papers, but not the ones they expected. The next day, I called Michael to my office on the pretext of reviewing some company documents. When he arrived, he found me sitting behind my mahogany desk surrounded by folders and papers. Mom, you should not be working so much. You get tired, he said with genuine concern. I stared at him, studying his face, looking for the boy I knew, behind the mask of worry Jessica had built. Michael, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. He sat in front of me, his nervous hands playing with the edge of his jacket. Sure, Mom, whatever. I took a deep breath. Do you really think I'm losing my mind? You who have known me all your life, who worked with me in this company for 15 years, do you genuinely believe I am no longer capable of making my own decisions? There was a long, heavy silence. I saw conflict in his eyes. Doubt, guilt. Mom, Jessica has noted things that I perhaps did not want to see because it hurts me to admit it. My heart broke a little more. And you trust more in what Jessica has noted in a year than in what you have lived with me for 42 years. He did not answer, and that was all the answer I needed. That conversation with Michael left a bitter taste that did not go away with coffee or the blood pressure pills I took every morning. My son was lost, completely wrapped in Jessica's web, and I needed to act fast before it was too late. That same afternoon, Jeremy arrived at my house with a black briefcase full of documents. Emily, I prepared everything you asked for. The new will is ready, the charitable foundation is registered, and I also drafted a document of mental lucidity certified by 3 independent doctors who evaluated you this morning. I nodded, remembering the marathon of cognitive tests I had passed at a private hospital at 7 a.m. Memory tests, logical reasoning, decision capacity. I had passed all of them with perfect scores. Excellent. And the other matter. Jeremy took out a manila folder. Here it is. Documents proving someone tried to forge your signature on property transfer papers for this house. The fake originals are in the hands of the police, but I have certified copies. I felt my skin crawl. When did this happen? 2 weeks ago. A notary got suspicious when they brought him the documents because the signature did not match the one he has on file. He called your bank to verify, and they contacted me. Jessica had tried to steal my house, my own house, the place where I raised my son, where I mourned my husband's death, where I built every memory of the last 30 years. My hands trembled with pure fury. I decided it was time to close the trap. I asked Thomas to install additional cameras specifically inside my office, the only place in the house I kept locked. I want angles from every corner. I want perfect audio. And I want the system to activate an automatic projection when someone opens that door without the correct key. Thomas looked at me with barely disguised admiration. Mrs. Carter, you remind me of my commander in the Army, always 3 steps ahead of the enemy. I smiled coldly. In business, you learn that the best attack is the one your opponent does not see coming until it is already too late. For 3 days, I prepared my office as if it were a theatrical stage. In the center on my desk, I placed a projector pointing toward the white wall. I programmed it to turn on automatically with a motion sensor. In the projector's memory, I loaded a video compiled with all the recordings of Jessica, her conversations with Brenda, planning to keep my properties, her phone calls lying about my mental health, the video of her paying Dr. Stevens for the false diagnosis, the images of her trying to open my desk drawers when she thought I was not looking. I also left on the desk in a visible place a legal letter with Jeremy's letterhead, where it clearly read immediate eviction for Jessica Ramirez and separation of marital assets from Michael Carter. It was a lie. There was no legal eviction yet, but I needed that document there as final bait. The last element of my plan required me to be out of the house but close. I told Michael I had an appointment with a neurologist at the hospital, an appointment that would supposedly last all afternoon with multiple studies. "Do you want me to accompany you, Mom?" He asked me with genuine concern. I shook my head, acting brave. "No, son, I know you have a lot of work." "I will take a taxi." I saw him send a text message to someone, probably Jessica, informing her that I would be out of the house for hours. Perfect. I got in my car, drove 2 blocks, and parked on a side street where I had a distant view of my house, but where no one could see me. I opened the camera app on my cell phone and waited. I did not have to wait long. 40 minutes later, Jessica's car parked in front of my house. She got out, quickly, looked around with evident nervousness, and used the key Michael had given her to enter. My heart beat loudly as I watched her move through the living room, captured on the security cameras. She went directly to the stairs, went up with fast steps, and stopped in front of my office door, the door I always kept locked. I saw her try to turn the knob. Locked. Her expression changed from anxiety to frustration. She took out her cell phone and dialed a number. Jessica's voice sounded clear through the hidden microphones. "Brenda, I am here, but the damn door is locked. No, Michael does not have this key, only her." A pause while she listened to her sister on the other side. Yes, I know. The papers must be in there. If I do not find them today, we cannot proceed with the plan." Another pause. "Fine, I am going to force it. The old lady is at the hospital. There has to be something useful inside." She hung up the phone and started banging on the door. First with her fist, then with her shoulder, using all her weight. "Damn it! Why is this door locked?" she screamed, her voice transformed into something ugly and desperate, so different from the honeyed tone she always used. She hit it again and again, and I watched from my cell phone, holding back a smile of icy satisfaction. The door, which I had strategically loosened that same morning, finally gave way with a dry crack. Jessica lost her balance and fell face first into my office, her hands outstretched, trying to break the fall. She got up quickly, dusting off her cream-colored pants, and then looked up. The motion sensor had activated the projector. The white wall lit up with the first image, Jessica and Brenda in my living room, the audio recording playing loud and clear. "She is perfect. She is more senile than you thought. It will be easy." The scream Jessica let out was music to my ears, a sharp scream full of shock and horror, the scream of someone who just watched her whole castle of lies collapse. She stood paralyzed in front of the projection while the images changed automatically. Her talking to Dr. Stevens and handing him an envelope with money, her whispering to Michael about nursing homes, her trying to open my desk drawers when I was supposedly napping. Every scene was more damning than the last. "No, no, no, no," Jessica repeated as she frantically approached the projector, trying to turn it off, her trembling hands looking for buttons that did not exist because I had sealed all the controls. The projection continued. Then came the video of her at the notary handing over documents with my forged signature. Her face on the screen was of absolute concentration while the notary reviewed the papers with a suspicious expression. "Ma'am, this signature does not seem to match," the notary said in the security recording from the notary's office that Thomas had obtained through legal contacts. "Oh, it must be because Mrs. Carter has arthritis, and her hand shakes a lot lately." Jessica responded with ease. "Documented fraud in high definition." Jessica finally managed to knock over the projector, but it was already too late. She turned abruptly and saw the eviction letter on my desk. She took it with trembling hands, her eyes scanning every line with increasing speed. Her face went from red with shame to ghostly white in a matter of seconds. "This cannot be happening," she muttered again and again. She frantically searched the desk drawers, throwing papers on the floor, open folders spilling everywhere. She was looking for the original company documents, the property titles, anything that could serve her. What she did not know was that I had moved everything to a safe deposit box at the bank 2 weeks ago. The drawers only contained copies and irrelevant documents. I saw her fall to her knees in the middle of the chaos. She had created papers scattered around her like physical evidence of her desperation. She took out her cell phone with trembling hands and called Michael. "Michael, you have to come to your mother's house right now. Now!" "No, I cannot explain over the phone. Just come." Her voice sounded on the verge of total panic. She hung up and sat on the floor of my office, breathing heavily, probably trying to invent some excuse, some lie that could save her. But there were no longer enough lies in the world to get her out of this hole. I decided it was time to make my grand entrance. I put the cell phone in my purse, started my car's engine, and drove back to my house. I parked right behind Jessica's car, intentionally blocking her in. I took out my phone and called Thomas. "It is time. Bring the documents and come with the contacts I mentioned." Then I called Jeremy. "I am going in. Meet me at my house in exactly 15 minutes. I walked toward my front door with slow and deliberate steps, savoring every second. The key turned in the lock with a satisfying click. I entered and closed the door behind me softly. From upstairs, I heard frantic movement. Jessica had heard the door. I went up the stairs calmly, my shoe sounding against every wooden step, a rhythmic count marking the end of her reign of lies. When I reached the second-floor hallway, I saw her standing in the doorway of my destroyed office, her hair messy, her makeup smeared with tears of desperation, or perhaps rage. We stared at each other. Me calm and upright at my 63 years, her trembling like a cornered animal. "Hello, Jessica," I said with a voice soft but lethal. "I think you and I need to have a very serious conversation." Jessica opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her eyes moved frantically between my calm face and the chaos of scattered papers behind her in the office. Finally, she found her voice, and when she spoke, all trace of sweetness had disappeared completely. You were spying on me. This is illegal. Invasion of privacy in my own house." I laughed a dry and cold laugh that echoed in the silent hallway. "Your own house. Dear Jessica, this is my house. Paid with my money 25 years ago, and recording what happens on my property is completely legal." I took a step toward her and saw her recoil instinctively. "But do you know what is not legal? Forging signatures on property transfer documents, bribing a suspended doctor to get a fraudulent diagnosis, conspiring to commit fraud against an elderly person. Do you want me to continue?" Her face went through a series of expressions. Shock, fear, then something more dangerous, pure rage. "You have no proof of anything. They are just edited videos. Any judge would dismiss them." I took my cell phone out of my purse and tapped the screen a few times. "Do you want to bet? I have audio recordings with certified timestamps. I have the testimony of the notary who rejected your fake documents. I have the record of your $5,000 payment to Dr. Stevens' bank transfer included. And above all, I paused, dramatically enjoying every second. I have your full confession recorded exactly. I looked at my watch 37 minutes ago, when you told your sister you were going to force my door to steal documents." Jessica's legs seemed to fail her. She leaned against the door frame, her skin now a sickly greenish tone. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "What do I want?" I repeated, savoring the words. "I want my son to see who you really are. I want you to know what it feels like to be defeated by someone you completely underestimated. And I want you to disappear from our lives forever." The sound of the front door opening interrupted our confrontation. "Mom, Jessica." It was Michael, his voice full of concern, coming up the stairs. Jessica looked at me with pleading eyes. All her arrogance evaporated. "Please, Mrs. Carter, we can talk about this. Michael and I love each other. I just wanted to secure our future." I looked at her with absolute disgust. "Love him? You do not know what that word means. The only thing you love is my money." Michael appeared in the hallway and stopped dead, seeing the scene. His wife disheveled and anguished me, standing with an expression of steel, and behind Jessica my office completely destroyed. What the hell happened here? His gaze went from one to the other, looking for explanations. "Michael," I said with a firm voice, "you need to see something." I guided him to the office. Jessica tried to block the entrance, but I pushed her aside gently. Michael entered and observed the disaster of papers, the overturned projector, the open drawers. "Mom, I do not understand. What is happening?" Instead of answering, I picked up the projector from the floor, placed it back on the desk, and turned it on. The image projected on the wall again. Michael stood motionless as he watched the compiled video. I saw how his expression changed with every revealing scene. First confusion, then disbelief, then growing horror. When it reached the part where Jessica told Brenda they would sell my company in parts, I saw his hands close into fists. "No," he muttered. "No, this has to be a mistake." But the video continued relentlessly. The conversation about the nursing home, the payment to the corrupt doctor, the forgery of documents. When it finished, the silence in that office was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Michael turned slowly toward Jessica, who was in the doorway with tears running down her cheeks. "Tell me this isn't real. Tell me there is an explanation." His voice sounded broken, destroyed. Jessica extended her hands toward him in a pleading gesture. "Honey, I can explain. Your mother is misunderstanding everything. I was just worried about you, about us." "Misunderstanding?" Michael's voice went up an octave. "I saw you paying a doctor to say my mother is demented. I heard you planning to steal her house. How the hell is that misunderstood?" Jessica changed tactics, her tears flowing faster. "I was scared. Michael, your mother hates me. She has always hated me. I thought I needed to protect myself, protect us. Everything I did was for love." Michael ran his hands over his face, visibly devastated. My heart ached for him, but I needed him to see this to the end. "Son," I said softly, "there is something else you need to know." I took out the folder Jeremy had prepared and handed it to him. Jessica has been married twice before, both older men with widowed mothers or elderly parents with properties. The first husband died in suspicious circumstances 8 months after getting married. The second discovered her forging his signature on bank documents. Michael opened the folder with trembling hands, reading the reports from the private investigator, the certificates of previous testimony, the police reports. With every page, his face became paler. "You are a professional con artist," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. "All this from the beginning was a scam." Jessica shook her head desperately. "No, Michael, I love you. Yes, I made mistakes in the past, but with you it is different. You are different." The doorbell rang downstairs, interrupting the scene. "That must be my lawyer," I said calmly. "Michael, you can let him in." My son went down the stairs like an automaton, clearly in shock. Jessica and I were left alone in that tense hallway. "It is over," I told her in a low voice. "You have 2 options. Option 1, you sign the divorce papers right now, give up any right to Michael's assets, and leave this city. I will not press criminal charges, and you can start over somewhere else." She looked at me with pure hate. "And Option 2, I smiled without humor. "Option 2, I call the police right now, present all possible charges, and you spend the next few years in prison for fraud, forgery of documents, and conspiracy. You choose." We heard steps coming up the stairs. Michael returned with Jeremy, who carried a black briefcase. Mrs. Carter greeted the lawyer with professionalism. Then he looked at Jessica. "Mrs. Ramirez, I have here urgent divorce documents with total separation of assets. If you sign now, this matter can be resolved quickly and discreetly. If you do not sign—" He paused significantly, Mrs. "Carter will proceed via criminal legal action." Jessica looked at Michael, looking for some support, some sign that he would fight for his marriage. But my son simply looked at her with empty eyes, as if he were seeing a complete stranger. Jessica grabbed Michael's arm with desperation, her nails digging into the fabric of his shirt. "Michael, please, you cannot do this. We are husband and wife. We swore eternal love. You have to believe me. All this is a horrible misunderstanding." Michael broke free from her grip with a sharp movement that surprised me with its firmness. "A misunderstanding. Jessica, I saw you on video planning to put my mother in a nursing home while you stole everything she worked for over decades. I heard you talking about selling the company my parents built together. What part of that is a misunderstanding?" His voice trembled with contained emotion. "The woman I married does not exist, does she? It was all a lie from day one." Jessica tried to touch him again, but he recoiled. For the first time since I met her, I saw genuine panic in her eyes. Not panic over losing Michael's love, but panic over losing access to our money. "You have 10 minutes to decide." Jeremy interrupted with a professional but firm tone. "After that, we will proceed with Option 2 automatically." He took the documents out of his briefcase and placed them on my desk, now cleared of the papers Jessica had scattered. "I need a pen," she said finally, her voice defeated and bitter. The change was instant. There were no longer tears. There were no pleas. Her mask had fallen, completely revealing the cold and calculating woman who had always been underneath. Jeremy handed her a black pen, and we watched in silence as Jessica signed every page of the divorce documents. Her hand moved quickly, almost with rage, pressing the paper with so much force she almost tore it. "This is not fair," she muttered between her teeth. "I worked for this marriage. I invested time, effort." I let out an incredulous laugh. "You worked. The only thing you did was lie and manipulate. That is not work, it is fraud." She raised her gaze toward me with eyes full of poison. "You think you are so smart, so superior. But you just got lucky. If Michael had been a little less weak, this would have worked perfectly." Michael took a step toward her, his face red with fury. "Weak. I opened my life to you, my heart, my family, and the only thing you saw were dollars." Jessica signed the last page with an aggressive scribble and threw the pen on the desk. "It is done. Happy. Can I go now?" Jeremy collected the documents carefully, verifying every signature. "Not yet. There is an additional clause. You must leave the residence you share with Mr. Michael Carter within the next 24 hours. You can take only your personal belongings, nothing that has been bought with money from Mr. Carter or Mrs. Carter." Jessica opened her mouth to protest, but Jeremy raised a hand. "And if you try to contact any member of this family after today, you would violate a restraining order that will go into effect immediately." "Understood." I saw her swallow her pride, clearly wounded, but without options. "Understood." She turned to leave, but I stood in her way one last time. "One more thing. I know about your 2 previous marriages. I know about the first husband who died conveniently. If ever, and I mean ever, you try something similar with another family, I will personally make sure every relevant authority receives a complete file on you. I will track you. Jessica Ramirez. Consider this your only warning." I saw real fear in her eyes for the first time. Genuine fear that I would carry out my threat. "Do not dare threaten me." She tried to sound brave, but her voice trembled. "It is not a threat. It is a promise. Now get out of my house." Jessica looked at me with burning hate for long seconds. Then she looked at Michael, looking for one last chance of salvation. But my son had turned his face away, unable to even look at her. With a stifled scream of frustration, Jessica ran out of the office, went down the stairs with heavy steps, and slammed the front door so hard the whole house shook. We heard her car starting outside, the tires screeching against the pavement as she drove away at full speed. And then there was only silence. Michael dropped into the chair in front of my desk, his head in his hands. His shoulders shook, and I realized he was crying. I approached slowly and placed my hand on his back, feeling how he shuddered with every sob. "I am sorry, Mom," he said with a broken voice. "I am so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have seen who she really was. But I thought I had finally found someone who loved me." My heart broke listening to him. As much as Jessica had hurt me, the real damage had been against my son. "Michael, you do not have to apologize. She was very good at what she did. She was a professional." He lifted his head, his eyes red and swollen. "But I treated you like you were crazy. I seriously considered putting you in a nursing home. How can I live with that?" I knelt in front of him, ignoring the pain in my 63-year-old knees. "You can live with that by learning from this, learning to trust your instinct, your family, the people who have shown you true love all your life." I took his hands in mine. "And you can live with that by helping me ensure no other family goes through what we went through." Michael nodded slowly, wiping the tears with the back of his hand. Jeremy, who had been silently organizing the documents, cleared his throat discreetly. "Mrs. Carter, all the papers are in order. The divorce will be final in 90 days. I recommend changing all the locks on both properties and the passwords to all bank accounts immediately." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Michael moved temporarily into my house while he processed the end of his marriage. I hired a locksmith who changed every lock, every security combination. Thomas installed an even more sophisticated security system. I changed every bank password, every access code to the company. I erased any digital trace Jessica could have left in our lives. Michael spent hours in his old teenage room staring at the ceiling, processing how he had been so completely deceived. One night a week after the incident, I prepared dinner for both of us. Pasta with homemade tomato sauce, his favorite food since he was a child. We ate in silence for several minutes until Michael put down his fork. "How did you know?" he asked. "How did you know from the beginning that something was wrong?" I took a sip of water before answering. Intuition, mainly. 40 years in business teaches you to read people. But there were also signs. The way she evaluated every object in my house as if she were calculating its value. How she always asked about finances, disguising it as concern. The speed with which she wanted to marry you. Michael nodded slowly. "I feel so stupid." I leaned over the table and took his hand. "You are not stupid. You are human. You wanted love, companionship, someone to share your life with. Those are beautiful and normal desires. Jessica simply exploited those desires." Weeks passed and slowly Michael began to heal. He returned to focus on the company with renewed energy. He cut all contact with Jessica, who, according to Thomas, had left the city completely. Apparently, she had moved to another region, probably looking for her next victim. I kept my promise. I sent detailed files on her to consumer protection agencies, fraud offices, and I even posted warnings on online forums for seniors about marriage scammers. Her face and full name circulated in private databases of investigators. It would be much harder for her to repeat her scheme. A month after the divorce, I received a call from the notary who had rejected Jessica's fake documents, Mrs. Carter. "I thought you should know. The woman who tried to forge your signature was arrested in another state for trying the same thing with another victim. Apparently the man was a retired judge and did not take kindly to the attempted fraud. She is facing multiple charges." I hung up the phone with a smile of satisfaction. Karma, finally. Michael was in the living room when I told him the news. I saw some relief in his eyes, as if confirming that Jessica really was a criminal helped validate his pain. "It is over then," he said quietly. I nodded. It is over. But we both knew the scars would take much longer to heal than the visible wounds. 3 months after the divorce, life began to find a new rhythm. Michael moved into a small but bright apartment in the city center, a place he chose for himself without anyone's influence. I helped him decorate it, and it was beautiful to see how little by little he recovered his independence and his confidence. He kept coming to dinner at my house twice a week, and slowly the conversation stopped revolving solely around Jessica and the betrayal. We talked about business, about new projects, about his plans to travel, and get to know himself better. I think I married her so fast because I was afraid of being alone. He confessed to me one night while we drank coffee in my living room. "Dad died, and you seemed so strong, so capable of moving forward." I felt lost. I placed my cup on the table and looked directly at him. Michael's strength does not mean not feeling pain. I was also lost when your father died. The difference is, I had 40 years of built life of my own identity. You are still building yours, and that is fine. I saw tears form in his eyes. "Do you think I will ever be able to trust someone again?" The question broke my heart. "Yes, son, but this time you will know the red flags. This experience, as painful as it was, gave you wisdom. Use it." He nodded discreetly, wiping his eyes. "I love you, Mom, and thank you for not giving up on me even when I doubted you." I hugged him tight, this 42-year-old man who was still my boy. The company flourished under our renewed administration. Without Jessica's toxic influence poisoning every decision, Michael and I worked as the team we had always been. We closed 3 important contracts with international distributors, expanded our product line, and hired 5 new employees. One afternoon during a board meeting, Michael presented a proposal that took me by surprise. "I want to create a fund within the company dedicated to helping victims of financial fraud, especially elderly people. We could partner with legal organizations to offer free consultations and educational resources." The other board members exchanged looks, clearly not understanding where this proposal came from. But I understood perfectly. Michael was transforming his pain into purpose. "I completely support this proposal," I said firmly. "In fact, I will personally donate $100,000 to start the fund." The proposal was approved unanimously. 2 weeks later, we launched the program with a press conference where Michael spoke openly about how our family almost became a victim of fraud. He did not mention specific names, but his message was clear and powerful. I saw genuine pride shine in his eyes as he spoke in front of the cameras, using his vulnerability to help others. During this time, I also made changes in my life. I signed up for painting classes, something I had always wanted to do, but never had time for. I met a group of women my age, all with fascinating stories and contagious laughter. I started traveling more small trips around the country, visiting cities I had never seen. On one of those trips to a beautiful mountain region, I met a widower named Arthur, a quiet 65-year-old man who had been a history teacher all his life. We drank coffee together in a small cafe overlooking the mountains, talking for hours about books, politics, our lives. There was no hidden agenda, no calculations, just two people enjoying a genuine conversation. When I returned home, I told Michael about Arthur. I saw a flash of concern cross his face, probably memories of Jessica. "Mom, just be careful." I smiled and took his hand. "Son, I learned to be careful a long time ago, but I also learned that I cannot let fear stop me from living. Arthur is a good man, but even if he were not now, I know exactly what to do." Michael laughed a genuine and liberating laugh. Any scammer who tries to trick you would be signing their social death sentence. We both laughed, and it was the first time in months that the laughter in that house did not come with an undertone of pain. One day, 6 months after the incident, Thomas called me with news. "Mrs. Carter, I thought you should know. Jessica Ramirez was sentenced to 4 years in prison." The retired judge I mentioned managed to build a solid case with multiple charges. Also, the two previous families filed civil lawsuits once they found out about the case. She is going to get out of prison without a penny and with a permanent criminal record. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because justice finally caught up with Jessica. Sadness because I thought of how many lives she had ruined before being stopped. "Thank you for informing me, Thomas. Could you send me the case details? I want to add them to our educational program." That night during dinner with Michael, I told him about Jessica's sentence. I expected to see triumph in his eyes, but instead, I saw something more complex. "Part of me wants to feel satisfaction," he admitted, "but mostly I just feel emptiness, as if that whole chapter of my life had been an illusion." I nodded understandingly. "It was an illusion, son, but the lessons you learned are real. The pain you felt was real. And the person you are now, wiser and more cautious, but still capable of loving and trusting that person, is real." We implemented new protocols in the company, inspired by our experience. Every important document now required in-person verification with biometric identification. We established independent quarterly audits. We created a system where no single person could have full access to all accounts and assets. Michael joked, saying we had turned the company into Fort Knox, but we both knew these precautions were necessary. The Fraud Victim Aid Program began receiving calls almost immediately after launch, stories that broke the heart. Seniors who had lost their life savings, families torn apart by scammers who married for convenience, children manipulated against their parents. Michael personally supervised every case, making sure they received the legal and emotional help they needed. I saw how this work transformed him, giving him a deeper purpose than simply managing the company. One afternoon, while we reviewed the month's cases, he looked at me with a serious expression. "Mom, I want to thank you for not letting me make the worst mistake of my life. If you had ended up in a nursing home if Jessica had gained control of everything." His voice broke. "I do not want to think about that." I got up from my chair and hugged him. But it did not happen. We fought together, we won together, and now we are helping others together. That is what matters. 1 year after the day Jessica forced my office door, I organized a small celebration. Not to celebrate Jessica's fall, but to celebrate our survival, our healing, our renewed relationship. I invited Michael Jeremy Thomas and also Arthur, who had become a close friend and possibly something more. I prepared an elaborate dinner, decorated the house with fresh flowers, and we toasted with wine I had been saving for a special occasion. To second chances, Michael said, raising his glass. To family that never abandons you, Jeremy added. To women who do not let themselves be defeated, Thomas said with a smile. To Emily, Arthur said, simply looking at me with genuine warmth. I raised my glass, feeling deep gratitude. To all of us for having survived the storm and found the sun on the other side. We drank, we ate, we laughed. The office Jessica had destroyed was now completely renovated, full of new files from the aid program. The cameras were still installed, a permanent precaution, but I no longer saw them as symbols of paranoia, but as tools of protection. My house was no longer a battlefield. It was a home again, full of love, laughter, and hope for the future. And as I observed the important people in my life gathered in my living room, I knew we had won something more valuable than any legal victory. We had won our peace. The following months brought changes I never imagined at my 63 years. Arthur and I began seeing each other more frequently, our conversations evolving from casual meetings to intentional dates. He was completely different from any man I had met. He did not ask about my finances. He did not evaluate my house with calculating eyes. He did not try to rush me into any commitment. He simply enjoyed my company, and I enjoyed his. One afternoon, while walking through a nearby park, he took my hand gently. Emily, I know you have been through a lot. I am in no hurry for anything. I just want you to know that I genuinely care about you. I felt tears sting my eyes, but they were good tears this time. Thank you for your patience, Arthur. After everything that happened with my son, it is hard for me to trust. He nodded understandingly. Trust is built slowly with consistent actions, not pretty words. I have all the time in the world. Michael met Arthur formally a month later. I saw the tension in his shoulders when we sat down to dinner, the three of us, at an elegant restaurant. My son interrogated Arthur with questions that bordered on rude, asking about his financial history, his previous marriages, his intentions. Arthur answered every question with patience and total honesty. I have a teacher's pension that covers my basic needs. I own a small house I bought 30 years ago, completely paid off. I was married for 40 years until my wife died of cancer 3 years ago. I have 2 adult daughters who live in other cities, and 3 grandchildren I visit regularly. He took a deep breath before continuing. And my intentions with your mother are simply to know her, spend time with her, and see where this takes us naturally. I do not need her money, Michael. I have mine, modest, but sufficient. I saw how Michael relaxed gradually during dinner. Afterward, when Arthur went to the bathroom, my son leaned toward me. He seems genuine. Mom, but please let me do a background check. I laughed softly. I already did it 2 weeks ago. Arthur is exactly who he says he is. Michael blinked, surprised, then smiled with pride. You learned well from the experience. I nodded. We both learned. When Arthur returned to the table, Michael extended his hand. Arthur, I appreciate your honesty, and I appreciate that you understand why I am protective of my mother. Arthur shook his hand firmly. Protection comes from love. Never apologize for loving your mother. I saw Michael blink, rapidly moved. In that moment, I knew everything would be fine. The company continued to thrive. The Fraud Victim Aid Program had assisted over 50 families in the first year, providing free legal consultations, emotional support, and education on red flags. Michael became a spokesperson for the program, giving talks at community centers and senior living residences. One afternoon, after one of his presentations, an older woman approached crying, Mr. Carter, my daughter, just married a man who is doing exactly what you described, trying to convince her that I am senile, that I need institutional care, but I know he just wants my house. Michael took her hands gently. Ma'am, we are going to help you. Give me your contact details. He called me that night, his voice full of renewed purpose. Mom, this woman needs exactly what you did. Evidence, documentation, a strategic plan. We worked together on the case for weeks, advising the woman on how to install hidden cameras, how to document every suspicious interaction, how to protect her assets legally. The case was resolved successfully 3 months later, when the daughter finally saw the recordings of her husband admitting his plan. Another divorce, another family saved from a predator. The older woman came personally to thank us, bringing a homemade cake and tears of gratitude. You saved me from losing everything. Not just my house, but my dignity, my independence." Michael hugged her, and I saw he was crying too. "You saved yourself by seeking help. We only gave you the tools." After she left, Michael sat in my office. That same office where it had all started. "This is what I want to do with my life, Mom. Not just manage the company. I want to expand this program, make it national, help thousands of families." My heart filled with pride. "Then let's do it." Over the next few months, we worked on an expansion plan. We contacted national anti-fraud organizations, established alliances with law firms offering pro bono services, created educational materials we distributed for free. Michael's story, carefully edited to protect identities, was published in specialized magazines like Warning and Guide. We received hundreds of messages from grateful people sharing their own stories of family manipulation and marriage fraud. One afternoon, Thomas arrived at my house with a serious expression. "Mrs. Carter, I received information I thought you should know. Jessica is trying to appeal her sentence, claiming she was unfairly persecuted by you." I felt a flash of old rage, but breathed deeply. "Does she have any chance of success?" Thomas shook his head. "None. The evidence against her is overwhelming from multiple victims. Also, during her time in prison, she has been writing threatening letters to the retired judge's family. That only worsened her situation." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. "You know what is sad, Thomas? That Jessica probably had some trauma in her life that led her down this path, but she chose to hurt others instead of healing." Thomas sat in front of me. "The compassion you show, even after what she did, says a lot about your character." "Mrs. Carter?" I shrugged. "It is not compassion as much as understanding that hurt people hurt others, but that does not excuse her actions. It just contextualizes them." I asked Thomas to keep monitoring any activity of Jessica's, but decided not to tell Michael about the appeal. He was healing too, building a new life. He did not need ghosts from the past disturbing his peace. Arthur and I became closer and closer. We did not live together. We both valued our independence too much for that, but we spent several days a week together. We cooked, watched movies, argued about politics and philosophy, traveled to small towns, exploring local markets. One night, while drinking wine on my terrace, watching the stars, he asked me a question that took me completely by surprise. "Emily, do you ever think about Jessica?" I considered the question carefully. Sometimes. I wonder if in another life with different circumstances, she could have been different. But mostly I think about the lessons I learned, about trusting my instinct, about protecting what I love without apologies, about the importance of solid evidence before confronting. Arthur nodded thoughtfully. "It impresses me that you are not full of bitterness." I laughed softly. "Bitterness is poison you drink expecting it to kill your enemy. I chose to use that experience as fuel for something productive. The aid program, my renewed relationship with Michael, even my ability to open up to you. It all came from that horrible experience." He took my hand. "You are an extraordinary woman, Emily Carter." I blushed like a teenager. I am just a woman who refused to be a victim. The second anniversary of the incident arrived quietly. Michael and I did not celebrate it or mention it explicitly, but we were both aware of the date. That night we dined together at my house, just the two of us, like in the old days. "You know what is ironic," Michael said while cutting his meat. "Jessica wanted to destroy our relationship to take control, but the only thing she achieved was making us stronger." I raised my wine glass to the unintended consequences of bad actions. Michael toasted with me, smiling. "Mom, there is something I want to tell you. I met someone." My heart gave a jolt of instant concern, but I kept my expression neutral. "Tell me." He took a deep breath. "Her name is Sarah. She is an accountant. She works at one of the companies we audit. We met at a meeting 3 months ago. We have been dating slowly, very slowly. And Mom, I want you to know I have investigated her thoroughly. Full background check, financial history references from previous employers. I even spoke to her family. I felt tears of pride form in my eyes. Michael, I am glad you found someone, and I'm even happier that you learned to protect yourself." He smiled nervously. "Will you meet her? But no pressure. I can wait until you are ready." I took his hand across the table. "I would love to meet Sarah. How about next week?" I met Sarah a week later at a quiet cafe downtown. She was a 38-year-old woman, brown hair tied in a simple ponytail without excessive makeup, dressed in a gray suit that spoke of professionalism without pretension. When we greeted each other, her handshake was firm but not aggressive. "Mrs. Carter, Michael has told me a lot about you. It is an honor to finally meet you." I sat across from her, studying her with experienced eyes that had learned to detect falsehoods. "Michael told me you are an accountant. How long have you been in the profession?" During the next hour, I asked her questions that probably seemed like an interrogation. Sarah answered each one with direct honesty without trying to impress or manipulate me. She talked about her middle-class family, her parents still married after 40 years, her younger brother who was an engineer. She talked about her divorce 5 years ago from a marriage that simply did not work without drama or grudges. We married too young and wanted different things from life. We separated like civilized adults. When I asked what she knew about what Michael had gone through with Jessica, she did not hesitate. "He told me everything, and I completely understand why you would be cautious with me. If I were you, I would be too." Her transparency disarmed me. "And it does not bother you to be subjected to so much scrutiny." Sarah smiled gently. "Mrs. Carter, if someone is not willing to be transparent about their life, they probably have something to hide." "I have nothing to hide." After Sarah left, Michael stayed with me at the cafe. "Well, what do you think?" I drank my now cold coffee, considering my words carefully. "She seems genuine. Son, she seems real. But take your time." "There is no rush." Michael nodded vigorously. "I know this time I'm going to do everything differently. Meet her family, spend time with her in different contexts, see how she handles stress and disagreements. Everything I did not do with Jessica." I looked at him with renewed pride. "You have matured so much in these 2 years. Your father would be so proud of you." I saw his eyes get wet. I wish he could see me now. I wish he could see how his company is helping so many people. I took his hand across the table. "He sees you, Michael. Somehow I am sure he sees you." Over the next few months, I watched the relationship between Michael and Sarah develop at a snail's pace. She came occasionally for dinner, always polite, always respectful of boundaries. She never asked about finances. She never tried to access private areas of my house. She never insinuated that Michael should do this or that with his inheritance. She simply existed as a quiet and stable presence in his life. Slowly, very slowly, I began to relax. Maybe I thought not everyone was like Jessica. Maybe my son had finally found something real. The Fraud Victim Aid program reached its 2nd year with impressive numbers. We had assisted over 200 families, prevented frauds estimated at over $5 million, and established chapters in 4 different states. Michael became a recognized figure at national conferences on senior protection. I accompanied him occasionally, sharing my own story when I felt it could help. One afternoon, after a particularly emotional presentation at a university, a young woman approached us. "Mrs. Carter." "Mr. Carter, your story saved my grandmother. Literally saved her. Her new husband was doing exactly what you described. Thanks to your program, we were able to document everything, and she divorced before losing her house. I hugged her while she cried with gratitude. Thank you for seeking help. Thank you for not ignoring the signs. These interactions, these moments where our pain transformed into salvation for others, made it all worth it. Jessica had tried to destroy us, but instead she had given us a purpose bigger than ourselves." The irony did not escape me, and sometimes in private moments I almost thanked her for teaching us such valuable lessons, although the price had been high. 1 year after meeting Sarah, Michael came to my house with a small box in his pocket. I noticed it immediately, the square shape creating an obvious bulge. "You are going to propose," I said without preamble. He blushed, nervous as a teenager. "How did you know?" I pointed to his pocket with a smile. 42 years being your mother gives me a certain advantage." "I can see that." He took out the box and opened it. Inside was a simple but elegant ring, a single emerald green gemstone in a white gold setting. Nothing flashy. Sarah is not into flashy jewelry. But I wanted something special. I took the box, admiring the ring. "It is perfect, Michael. When will you give it to her? This weekend we are going to visit the place where we met. Mom, he paused, his voice trembling. Do you think I am ready? Do you think this is different? I got up and hugged my adult son. Son, no one is completely ready for marriage. But this time you enter with eyes open with wisdom, earned hard, and with someone who has consistently proven to be who she says she is. That is all you can ask for. He hugged me tight. I love you, Mom. None of this would have been possible without you. I felt tears roll down my cheeks. We saved each other, Michael. It was a team effort. Sarah said yes. The wedding was planned for 6 months later. Something small and intimate, only close family and true friends. This time there was no rush. There were no red flags, just two people who genuinely loved each other, building something real. I helped with the preparations, enjoying every moment of planning without the shadow of suspicion that had marked the wedding with Jessica. One afternoon, while Sarah and I reviewed flower options, she took my hand. Mrs. Carter, I want you to know I understand the importance of earning your trust. And I understand that probably there will always be a small part of you that will remain cautious because of what happened. That is fine. I do not expect it to be different. Her honesty moved me deeply. Sarah, I appreciate your understanding, and I want you to know you have already earned a lot of my trust. I see how you care for my son, how you respect our boundaries, how you build your own life, instead of trying to insert yourself into ours. That means more than you can imagine. She smiled with tears in her eyes. I just want to make him happy and be part of a family that clearly loves each other so much. I hugged her, feeling that finally I could allow myself to believe this was real, that this was good. Arthur and I also took a significant step. We decided to travel to Europe together a full month, visiting historic cities, museums, vineyards. It was magical in ways I had not experienced in decades. We walked through cobblestone streets in ancient cities, ate in small family restaurants, got lost intentionally in local markets. One night on a terrace overlooking a beautiful river in a city that seemed taken from a storybook, Arthur looked at me seriously. Emily, I do not want to get married. I already went through that, and it was beautiful with my wife. But I want to spend the rest of my life with you in the way that works for both of us. What do you say? I laughed, feeling lighter than in years. I say that sounds perfect. Two independent people choosing to be together without contracts or legal obligations, just love and companionship. We toasted under the European stars, two survivors of previous losses finding joy again. The day of Michael and Sarah's wedding was bright and beautiful. I wore an elegant lavender dress, but not flashy. I walked next to Michael toward the altar where Sarah waited in a simple and beautiful ivory dress. During the ceremony, I looked around the small gathering of genuine people, celebrating this real love, and felt deep gratitude for the path that had brought us here. 3 years after the day Jessica forced my office door, I sat in that same office writing this. Michael and Sarah had just announced they were expecting their first child, my first grandchild. The Victim Aid Program had grown nationally, helping thousands of families. Arthur and I were planning another trip, this time to Asia. My life was full of purpose, love, and peace. I looked at the wall where once the evidence of Jessica's betrayal was projected. Now photos of families we had helped, thank you letters, certificates of recognition from the program hung there. The office she tried to violate to rob me had transformed into the operations center to save others from similar fates. Sometimes I received updates on Jessica through Thomas. She had gotten out of prison after serving her sentence, worked a minimum wage job, lived in a small and modest apartment. She had not tried to contact us, and I hoped she never would. I felt no satisfaction for her fall, just relief that she could not hurt anyone else. What Jessica tried to destroy only made us stronger. My relationship with Michael was deeper than ever. I had found real love with Arthur. The company prospered while helping others, and soon there would be a grandchild to continue the legacy of strength, wisdom, and compassion. I leaned back in my chair, a 66-year-old woman who had survived betrayal, protected her family, and transformed pain into purpose. My office door was wide open now. I no longer needed to lock it because I had learned that true security does not come from locked doors, but from earned wisdom, genuine love, and the strength to face evil without allowing it to turn you into something bitter. Jessica wanted to steal my life. Instead, unintentionally, she gave me the opportunity to live it more fully and meaningfully than I ever imagined possible, and that I thought smiling as the afternoon sun illuminated my renovated office was the best revenge of all. Not violent or destructive revenge, but the silent revenge of a life well-lived lessons, well-learned, and love finally well-found. I closed my computer and went down the stairs where Arthur, Michael, and Sarah were waiting for me to have dinner. My family, the real one this time. And as we sat around my table sharing food and laughter, I knew with absolute certainty that I had won everything that really mattered.